Who was the greatest Toy Story villain? And will the upcoming AI villain destroy good old analog toys? And will Lotso ever redeem himself for his crimes? Today, we'll find out, because we're putting all Toy Story villains on trial. And we'll start with everyone's favorite teenager. Sid Phillips was a rebellious kid who liked heavy metal music, explosives, and torturing toys. But he was also a genius. His room looked less like a child's bedroom and more like a Nazi Germany laboratory where Nazi scientists conducted experiments on Barbie dolls. Baby heads with mechanical spider legs, fishing rod mutants, dismembered dolls stitched together into horrifying hybrid creatures. His experiments weren't ordinary playtime. Sid was mixing up body parts of the toys and creating mutilated hybrids. He created terrifying monster toys with his cruel experiments. And from the toys' perspective, it was a serious crime. He also stole toys from his sister, Hannah, and performed his operations on them. The doll named Janie ended up with a pterodactyl head. Charges? Theft and destruction of property. Since it was petty theft and destruction of property of small value, that one would be enough only for a warning, especially since Sid is a teenager. But if Sid was in the toys' court of law, these crimes would be torture and mutilation. And I doubt that the toys would show any mercy. So how would the toys punish Sid for these crimes? They would probably intimidate him and make him their lifelong human protector, their inside man in the human world. And that would be his punishment, lifelong servitude to the toys. Sid running count, lifelong servitude to the toys. And Sid is the only human in the franchise who knows toys are alive. When Sid gets a large firework rocket called the Big One, he straps Buzz Lightyear to it, planning to launch him into orbit. That counts as attempted murder. Luckily for Buzz, the launch never happened because the toys came up with a plan that almost made Sid insane. The toys scared him by showing him they were alive. So, if he was ever brought to the court of law run by toys, his punishment for all these crimes would be lifelong servitude, including spying for them, defending them, driving them around, and bringing them whatever they needed. In essence, they would make him their lifelong errand boy. Sid total count, lifelong servitude to the toys. And in the end, Sid's story turned out well, as in the third movie, we see that he became a garbage man and is happy with his job. Perhaps what changed him was a strange, scary warning he got from the toys. Or perhaps, the toys ordered him to become a garbage man so that he can make special deliveries for them. We'll never know, but think about it. A man who knows toys are alive now works around discarded objects every day. Either Sid genuinely felt guilty, or the toys quietly gave him clear career instructions. Now, let's talk about one old toy. A toy that nobody cared about since he was made in the 1950s. Stinky Pete was never taken out of his box. He spent decades sitting on a store shelf while other toys were purchased and loved by children. His loneliness eventually turned into resentment. And as the saying goes, resentment is like drinking poison and then hoping it will kill your enemies. Resentment often leads to crime, and with Stinky Pete, that was the case. Stinky Pete spent most of his time in his box. He claimed that children only destroy toys and then forget and abandon them. So when Al brought Woody, Stinky Pete's dream was now closer than ever, because with Woody completing the set, they could finally be sold to the Konishi Toy Museum, where they would be safe. And Pete talked about that museum like it's a paradise. For him, standing motionless behind glass for eternity while tourists take photos of him was paradise. So when Woody decided to leave, Stinky Pete had to trap Woody inside Al's toy store to prevent him from leaving, because he needed him in order to get to that museum. And that's false imprisonment, enough for 2 years in prison. Stinky Pete running count, 2 years in prison. Later, as Al McWiggin was on his way to Japan to sell them, Stinky Pete did everything to prevent the toys from saving Woody from the airport. And when Woody resisted, Stinky Pete attacked Woody with his pick, aiming to sever his arm in order to stop him from leaving. And that is aggravated assault, which adds another 4 years in prison according to the California Penal Code. Stinky Pete final count, 6 years in prison. In the end, Stinky Pete's final punishment was his worst nightmare. He was left by the toys in a random airport bag and was found by a girl named Amy, who loved to paint the faces of her toys. But let's talk about Stinky Pete's proud owner and toy collector, Al McWiggin. During the yard sale at Andy's house, Al noticed Woody, the only missing toy for his collection. He tried to buy him, but Andy's mother refused to sell Woody. Al went so far as to offer her $50 and his watch, but she refused. So Al pushed a skateboard to distract Mrs. Davis, and when she turned her back, he stole Woody and escaped with him. Charges? Grand larceny, since it's an expensive collectible toy. And according to the Californian law, this charge alone is enough to send Al to 2 years all the way to a state prison. Al running count, 2 years in prison. Later, when driving all the way to work on a Saturday, Al committed several traffic violations. No turn signals, unsafe merging, reckless driving, public endangerment, cutting through traffic, and driving over sidewalks. Combined, for these misdemeanors, he would have to pay a $2,000 fine and spend 90 days in prison. And don't forget all the laughs and looks he would get from the police officers, considering he was dressed as a giant chicken. Al running count, 2 years in prison, plus $2,000 fine, plus 3 months in prison. The way Al treats Woody is hilarious because he genuinely acts like Woody is a kidnapped celebrity. He keeps Woody locked inside the apartment, cleans him professionally, protects him from damage, and panics every time he disappears. And who wouldn't, considering Woody's enormous value? For this, Al would be charged for kidnapping in the Toys Court of Law, and his punishment would be to release all the toys from his store and serve them just like Sid. So that's another human minion, working for the toys. Lifelong servitude to the toys, while dressed as a giant chicken. Al running count, 2 years in prison, plus $2,000 fine, plus 3 months in prison, plus lifelong servitude to the toys. Later, Al tried to sell Woody to Mr. Konishi, a museum owner from Japan who wanted to buy the toy set. And that's another crime, attempting to sell stolen goods. And that adds another 10 years in prison, since it's a federal crime. Al final count, 12 years in prison, plus $2,000 fine, plus 3 months in prison, plus lifelong servitude to the toys. Now, let's talk about Gabby Gabby. She wanted Toys' love desperately, unlike Stinky Pete. Because of her broken voice box, her first owner gave her away, and she eventually ended up in an antique store, where she spent decades watching other toys leave while she remained unwanted. Gabby believed that if she could just fix her voice box, a child would finally love her. So when she met Woody, a toy with a working voice box, the Bensons, her mute ventriloquist dummy henchman, took Woody and Forky into the carriage for a ride and prevented them from leaving. And the Bensons move like sleep paralysis demons. No words, no blinking. So if Sid's horrifying mutants didn't traumatize enough kids, the Bensons sure did finish the job, turning the movie into a psychological horror. And Gabby Gabby also sounded way too creepy. Living with the Bensons probably made her worse over time, spending decades surrounded by silent ventriloquist dummies staring at walls all day. Anybody would eventually become a bit sociopathic in that environment. That whole antique store had the atmosphere of a cursed Victorian asylum. So there's kidnapping and false imprisonment for Gabby Gabby, since the Bensons acted on her orders. Enough for 6 years in prison. Gabby Gabby running count, 6 years in prison. Desperate to be loved by a child, Gabby Gabby wanted to take Woody's voice box and replace it with her own broken one. From Toys' perspective, that's attempted mutilation and causing bodily harm, as it's known under California law, and that's life in prison with the possibility of parole. Gabby Gabby total, 6 years in prison, plus life in prison with the possibility of parole. In the end, Woody voluntarily gave her his voice box to help her become an accepted toy. But she was rejected by Harmony, the girl she had hoped would become her owner. Woody then asked Gabby Gabby to join him and find a new child, which she eventually did when she helped a lost girl at the carnival. Now, let's talk about the #1 villain of the franchise. So far, Lotso Huggin' Bear, strawberry smelling teddy bear, wise and kind. At least, that's how it appears in the beginning. Lotso was once owned by a girl named Daisy, who loved him. They did everything together, and Lotso was her favorite toy. But after being accidentally left behind during a trip, he traveled all the way back to her house, only to discover that she had already replaced him with another identical toy. That broke old Lotso, and he decided to become a ruthless teddy bear, who runs Sunnyside Daycare as a violent dictator. In order to avoid children as much as he could, Lotso forced new toys into the toddler playroom, where they were imprisoned and guarded, while Lotso and his close allies lived comfortably in safer areas of the daycare. So that's false imprisonment, and 3 years per count, if Lotso was tried in a human court of law. When Buzz and the other toys showed up, Lotso imprisoned 12 of them. So that's 36 years in prison. Lotso run and count, 36 years in prison. When Buzz Lightyear and the toys decided to leave, Lotso's henchmen captured them, taking Buzz as their prisoner and reprogramming him. This wipes Buzz's entire personality and restores him to factory settings. Resetting Buzz because he disagreed with him is only what insane dictators do. From the toys' perspective, this was a much more serious crime than factory reset. It was coercion and psychological torture, and that would be enough for at least 20 years in prison, according to the Californian law. Lotso run and count, 36 years in prison, plus 20 years in prison. Additionally, if you didn't obey the rules in Lotso's prison, his main enforcer, Big Baby, is there to send you to the sandbox. This can be counted as another false imprisonment for Lotso, as he is the one who ordered it. So that adds another 3 years in prison for sending Mr. Potato Head there as punishment. Lotso run and count, 36 years in prison, plus 20 years in prison, plus 3 years in prison. Later, after being mistakenly placed in a garbage bag by Andy's mother, the toys escape the bag and end up in a dumpster behind Sunnyside Daycare. The garbage is then picked up by a garbage truck and taken to the landfill. When they become trapped on a conveyor belt, which slowly leads them to a huge fire, Lotso sees a stop button, climbs to it, and then refuses to press it, sending the toys down to the fire to be destroyed. That's the coldest crime any villain has committed in the franchise. Even Darth Vader and Voldemort occasionally hesitated, but not the strawberry-smelling bear. In the end, the toys were saved by the three-eyed alien toys. But this cruel crime qualifies as attempted murder of 9 toys, and that is 9 life sentences with the possibility of parole. But even if he was paroled, Lotso would have to serve another 59 years. Lotso final count, life in prison with the possibility of parole, plus 59 years in prison. In the end, Lotso is found by a garbage truck driver who picks him up, recalling owning one as a child, and straps him to the front of his truck with other damaged toys. And that's his final punishment. But was Lotso worse than all the other villains? Sid mutilated toys, Al collected them, Lotso imprisoned them. Stinky Pete and Lotso hated children, and Gabby desperately wanted their love. But what about the next villain? What if the next villain is loved by children everywhere? And that's exactly the problem. Imagination, creativity, and natural playtime have been lost to soulless screens. So the next villain will be LilyPad, a smart learning tablet for kids. Technology has replaced toys, and maybe in 2026, the battle between AI toys and good old-fashioned analog toys is what we need. What will LilyPad do? Will her crimes be worse than Lotso's? And will the kids return to play with the good old toys? Well, we'll find out in a month. And in the meantime, tell us your favorite Toy Story villains and what you think about the possibility of Lotso having his redemption in the upcoming movie. If you like this video, check out this one. If all Kung Fu Panda villains were charged for their crimes.